come once again to discuss things.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part2. Joining me today is Bill Worcester, aka Zazubar.
Hi, what's going on, man?
Not much. We're talking about scary stories.
Never done that before.
Nope, never, not once. So here we are yet again, Bill, to talk about another classic horror story. And that's not at all what this was originally intended to be. I just wanted to talk about stories as well as...
you never really pitched it as like we're only talking about classic stuff.
Yeah, and that's provided for what we're going to end up talking about next week, just to give myself a little, out there. It's like, I never said that, so...
Right.
Contractually, I'm not obligated.
Contractually to the people who probably won't care either way.
Exactly. I don't know. Someone might care. This is a weird story to review, though, because we're reviewing The Telltale Heart, and I mean, I'm not sure exactly what we're going to say about it that hasn't already been said.
Well, I've never even heard of it until you fucking told me about it, and I don't have a great exposure to Edgar Allen Poe. His stuff is never really just like I read him in school and everything, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is good, and it's, it's important and all that. But it never really struck a chord with me like a lot of other horror writers did. So I never delved into it on my own. So I had never heard of this, and I have never really heard anybody talk about it, except for you saying we were going to review it. So my opinion on this will be completely uninformed by anybody else's except yours, so...
That's interesting, because, I would consider this... it'd go The Raven... maybe Pit and the Pendulum, and then Telltale Heart, as far as, the most famous works of Poe.
Okay.
And I could easily see Telltale Heart getting above Pit and the Pendulum.
I've definitely heard of that one, though, and I know sort of what, the rough... See, but has a movie been made out of this? Because there's movies based on The Raven and Pit and the Pendulum, and...
they've mentioned it a lot. It's such a short story that it's hard to make a movie out of.
Yeah, but that's all of Poe's stories, though, and they've found ways. Most of the movies based on his stuff has very little to do with the actual story. The original version of The Raven has nothing to do with the fucking story.
Yeah, and then there's that John Cusack movie that was pretty bad.
Yeah, I didn't see that one. It looked terrible. I was like, why would you get John Cusack to play Edgar Allan Poe? What is wrong with you?
He looks the part, and that's pretty much, I think, where the thought behind that movie began.
Yeah, but Poe is such, a basic, just, sort of classic, sort of Englishman-looking dude that you could pretty much get anybody to put makeup on them and they'd look fine.
I don't know, but regardless, this is referenced in The Telltale Heart, if I'm remembering correctly. Or this is referenced in that John Cusack movie, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, because he actually plays Poe, and he's, trying to solve a mystery that's based...
Yeah, it's a really stupid idea. And then it's either that movie or another movie that was based on the Black Cat that had a scene where Edgar Allan Poe was talking to his publisher or whatever, and the publisher goes, "Oh, you should write more stuff like The Telltale Heart. That was so brilliant. Some guy goes crazy because of his landlord's creepy eye. Where do you come up with this stuff?" And the actor playing him had a lazy eye or whatever.
Yeah.
So just little stuff like that.
Okay.
It gets referenced a lot in Poe stuff, but it's such a short story. I don't think you could really do much to adapt it.
I think what you have to do, and it would be hard to do now because I think that there's a lot. It's a very basic sort of idea of guy commits a murder and then he has to deal with it. So it pretty much have to be the dealing with the murder is the bulk of the story would ultimately be. But that's been done a million times. How many movies have you seen where it's somebody does a terrible thing and then they have to deal with the guilt and remorse of the terrible thing that they did? It's been done a million times. So it'd be sort of redundant now. But
yeah, I don't know if you're gonna do it. The way I think that it would work best is if you did an Edgar Allan Poe anthology movie. where he just did like a bunch of short stories, like short sections, you know?
Yeah, they don't do that a lot anymore. I think movie 43 kind of killed that for people because it was fucking terrible. And
But dude, how could you question the artistic genius of giving Hugh Jackman balls on his chin?
yeah, I don't know. I actually haven't seen movie 43. I'm basing that on sort of the clips that I've seen and the general consensus, but
No, it's pretty stupid.
yeah, no, I have no bones about saying it's terrible without having seen it. But I think that kind of killed the anthology movie for a long time because of how bad that was.
Well, like, to be fair, we hadn't gotten one we hadn't gotten one before that for quite a while.
Yeah, no.
And even then, it's really rare to see one that's, like, not comedy.
Yeah, well, it's because sketch comedy is still a thing that is very popular nowadays. And short sketch comedy that's sort of interconnected is also very popular. I mean, it's what YouTube sort of made its name on. So it's still very accessible and easy for studios to make that sort of stuff because people still enjoy it. But with horror and other stuff like that, it's very hard to get people to sit down and go, okay, you're going to sit down for 2 hours and you're going to watch 5 mini horror stories. Because people just sort of go, well, why can't I watch American Horror Story then and just watch a season per story, you know? Or why can't I watch this as a miniseries and just break up each story? You know, that's sort of where people go.
You could, but I don't think it'd be the same. Because, like, I'm trying to think. I think the last serious one we got, quote-unquote, was the Twilight Zone movie. At least the last, like, major one that I can remember. Oh, wait, no. I take that back. Trick or Treat.
No, there's been a bunch after that. There was a Tales from the Dark Side movie. There was a couple Tales from the Crypt movies.
Tales from the Crypt, though, those movies I think were pretty much just one story.
Yeah, well, usually it's Tales from the Crypt Presents.
Yeah.
There's Creep Show 1 and 2, and
well, like, speaking of Tales from the Crypt, though, that's how the show got started, as opposed because, like, Donner and a bunch of other guys, Richard Donner and a bunch of other, like, big Hollywood names were trying to get a Tales from the Crypt movie produced, and they decided that it'd make more sense as a series.
Absolutely, yeah.
But anyway, let's go ahead and get into the story itself.
Let's do it.
So, first time reading this, from what you've talked about so far, it doesn't sound like you're very impressed.
It was fine. It didn't thrill me, and again, this is just what Poe tends to write about tends to not thrill me. He's an excellent writer and an excellent crafter of horror, and I could definitely say that while I was listening to this, and I listened to a really good version of this, by the way. It was an audiobook. It was a reading done by John Doyle, who does a bunch of sort of classic English literature on YouTube. So I listened to a great version of it, and it was very effective at sort of creating this creepy, low-key atmosphere. Because that's what I really liked about it inherently, was that it's a really, really small story. It takes place in one building. A major part of it is a guy sitting in a doorway watching another guy. And it's really impressive that Poe is able to make that bone-chilling and sort of creepy and interesting, and it keeps you compelled. It keeps you on the edge of your seat. I was laying down when I was listening to it, but I would have been on the edge of my seat if I had been sitting. It just didn't light my world on fire. Despite being creepy and sort of bone-chilling, it didn't scare me at all. I didn't find the ending that horrific, even though I did think it worked. And also, you know, here's the one thing that really bugged me. So, from the get-go, the guy tells you, you're going to think I'm crazy. And goes, I just killed somebody because of the way their eye looked. And he goes, I know you're going to think I'm crazy because I said that, and because I did that. And then it's sort of, the story is sort of him explaining, I'm not crazy, and here's why. And at no point did I ever actually, buy that he wasn't crazy, you know?
Well, I don't think that's the problem. I think that's very much intentional.
No, I know, but it just bugged me how much attention was drawn to the fact that he was like, I'm not crazy, you know? The reason, I have a legitimate reason for why I murdered this guy. And
Okay, well, with the idea of a murder, with the idea of a movie being made out of this, let me put it to you this way. imagine that opening paragraph, mad, why do you fancy me mad, blah, blah, blah. Imagine that's being said by a guy in a straitjacket to his psychiatrist, because that's how I always pictured it in my head.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That would make more sense, but I feel like it needed to be more clearly indicated that he was actually crazy, and that he had been driven to that place by the eye. It just bugged me from the get-go, because I was like, oh, okay, so this story is going to be a guy explaining to me why he's not crazy, and why it made sense that he did this, and that's not what I got, so it sort of bothered me. I can see why it's not really a problem, per se, and this is one of those things, let me just say this now, criticizing this is really weird, because it's crazy old. It's very important to literature on the whole, and again, being somebody who hasn't had a large exposure to Poe in general, what I say against this or for it might be. I don't mean to discount my opinion, but it's just sort of it's hard to actually objectively criticize it. It's more sort of well, this bugged me, and this sort of hindered my enjoyment of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know, for me, this is one of my favorite stories ever. Even the writing style has greatly affected not only the way in which I write fiction, but the way in which I write, period. Because, this was the first story where I actually bought the first-person narrator. I'd read stuff before where it was written in first person, and most of that stuff wasn't particularly good.
Yeah, I don't tend to enjoy that as a sort of a general rule.
Yeah, but this actually reads like it's a person talking. Let me grab it real quick.
No, I'm with you. It definitely does. The first-person perspective feels natural. Because for me, it's I just finished listening to the audiobook for The Martian.
Oh, yeah? Did you watch the movie?
Yeah, I saw the movie, too. Okay. I love both of them. The book, I think, is... I don't want to say leaps and bounds better, because I really like the movie, but it's better. To me, I enjoyed it more.
See, I heard, from people that the movie was better.
No, I like the book better.
Okay.
But, in that, it's all over the place. They jump all over tons of different perspectives. But by and large, it is written from the first-person perspective of Mark Watney. And in those sections, it makes perfect sense that they are that way, because they use a framing device to explain why it's written in first person. He's writing log entries that NASA's going to read once he's rescued. So it makes sense that he would be writing it in the style that he's writing it. And also, it's a cool way to experience the events of that story. So, you need to sell me on first-person perspective for it to not be just really annoying.
Yes, for me, just this opening paragraph is really what sells it. True, nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in heaven and the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. I feel the movement of the words. I've never read stuff where I felt the difference of pacing of the person talking in first person before this. This is by far my favorite Poe story, because it's one of my favorite short stories, one of my favorite horror stories, because of just the way in which it uses first person. It totally grounds the first person and makes it actually sound like a person talking. And so that's why that part of it works for me. And I'm never expecting him to... it helps that I read Catch-22 before I read this. I'm never expecting him to give me a case for why he isn't crazy, because one of the rules of being crazy is you will never admit that you're crazy.
Right.
And that's what a Catch-22 is, you can't fly these missions if you're crazy, but the only way that you can be diagnosed as crazy is if you go tell your commanding officer that you're crazy, but that in and of itself is an act which proves you are sane. Yeah,
exactly. You can't just say, hey, I'm absolutely batshit insane, because you don't know what being normal is to compare it to. So yeah, I can see that.
That's why I never saw that as a problem, because I never expected him to give me any kind of logical explanation.
See, I did, just because of how big of a deal he was making out of it in the first paragraph. But now I can see that wasn't really supposed to be the idea. So I don't know, maybe I'll enjoy it if I ever go back and revisit it a little bit more, not thinking about it in that sense.
Maybe.
It is definitely beautifully written. I can't dispute that.
I love the language.
It's just so... It flows like an organic thing. Like it feels tactile, you know. Like it doesn't feel like just obtrusive words being forced upon you. It feels like there's a rhythm to it. It almost sounds like a song. It's so good. I'm
really curious. Like, did you ever hear the theory that iambic pentameter is set to the same rhythm of the heartbeat?
Yes.
I'm really curious to see someone try to read it in that rhythm. Because obviously it's not written that way, but it feels like it could almost be read that way.
It would also be interesting given sort of what happens in the story. Given that a lot of it is about the heart and sort of, what it tells you about a man and sort of how he's feeling and...
Yeah, and like there's just that sense of like callback. There's a term for that, and I can't remember what it is, but like, the I have a dream speech has it in spades. When you repeat a specific phrasing of words for emphasis, and you do it often, doesn't do it too often. It only does it twice, but it's damned effective. It's that line, such as the sound that a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. That is a beautiful callback, because he's talking about how he hears his heart start to thump that way, and then he starts to hear it again right before he goes crazy and starts ripping the floorboards in front of the cops.
Right. That was a really realistic scene too, by the way, because I was thinking, as I was listening to that part, I was like, that's probably what would happen to me if I ever actually killed someone and the cops were fucking there. I would I would try and be super chill at first, and then just the sheer idea of sitting there with police would just drive me crazy. So
yeah,
that scene was really effective to me as well.
So everyone, Bill is not the man for an interrogation scene.
No, I would suck in that. They could play me like a fucking drum. Like they could just go like, all right, so how you doing, Mr. Wilson? All right, I did it, damn it! I stabbed 6 people.
We just brought you in because we have these parking tickets you didn't pay for.
Oh man! Don't dig up my backyard.
Can we just pretend I didn't say that last part?
Yeah, can we just move? Listen, can we just do like a mental rewind, just a brrr, just like fucking old VCR. yeah, just like that. The cops are just sitting there, just fucking dumbfounded.
It's like, I think this kid's either stupid or high or both.
Probably both. we went into his room, and it indicates both.
He's got a Spawn figure for some reason.
Yeah, it's really...
like Spawn.
I mean, who the fuck likes Spawn? What sociopath reads Spawn?
Like, what crazy person would sit there and read a Spawn comic a day for a year?
Fucking lunatic, man. Jesus Christ. That's the people who should be putting in prison. Those fucking psychopaths.
Anyway, no, so like the rhythm of the wording in this is probably the thing I find most impressive.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
I will admit, while we're talking about the ending, I never actually cared for the end that much. Like,
what about it bothered you?
I like that he's hearing the heartbeat and that it's driving him crazy. I don't like that he comes out and like reveals himself to the police at that point.
I had no problem with that because I thought that he had been driven to that point, and the way it was worded was so strong that his reaction just seemed like the only natural way he could react.
For me, like, I think it's natural, but he's just so calculating in the rest of this story and so cold.
I can see that.
And composed that's the thing that bothers me. Because, like, in my mind, at least, the first time I read this was the very first serial killer story. like that's what I think of. I think of like, you know, those sociopaths and stuff, and like that's what they're thinking is they're just like perfectly calculated and everything.
Yeah, it's the idea
so
of committing the murder that's sort of more important to them than what actually committing the murder accomplishes.
Yeah, and so like the idea that I like the wording and everything, I just don't like that he reveals himself, because everything else about this is so about this character is so perfectly structured and composed from what we understand about him.
I can see that. I can totally see that. Again, it didn't bother me just because I guess I sort of related to it on a level. But I can totally see that would bother you.
Yeah.
He is super, like, I would almost like to know more about this guy prior to the story, just because of how fucking calculating he is. Like, this dude has immense amounts of patience, because he just fucking sits there in front of a doorway, waiting for this old man to lay back down after he wakes up that
and like, I don't know, you could easily play this up for laughs if, like, the old man clearly sees the guy sitting there. He's like, it's perfectly dark. I'm like, yeah, I got a pretty dark room, but, I mean, I'm pretty sure I'd be able to see some dude just, like, sitting in my doorway.
It's kind of hard to gauge now, though, because you could probably sit in a room in a house back then and it actually be pitch black. Like, you can't do that now, just with electricity and everything. It's almost impossible to make a room pitch black that has windows in it.
Fair enough. That's just like a thought I've had. I'm just like, really? Like, the dude's sitting there with a lantern and it doesn't give off any ambient light whatsoever?
Well, what he says is that when he...
Like, the thing was shut tight. I'm like, okay, but then when he, like, puts the beam out there and stuff...
It strikes the bad eye, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, wouldn't that give off some ambient light or something? Just a little bit?
I'm thinking what it must be is that in Poe's mind, and I don't think this is, like, realistic, but in Poe's mind, what I think it's supposed to be is that because one of the guy's eyes are bad, that the other one sort of has a harder time. Like, his vision is fucked up, so that's why it's so easy for the guy to sneak around like that. So
okay, that might make more sense.
I don't think that's realistic. I think that's what Poe was thinking when he wrote it.
Fair enough. No, I just always thought you could easily play that up for laughs, because the guy like screams out, he's like, "Who's there? You! Get your head out of my door!"
Hey, Alex, man, what are you doing down there?
just don't move, and he won't see me. No, like...
He's like Alan Grant in Jurassic Park. He's like, don't move.
And then everyone else runs away in the third movie.
Yeah, exactly. Fucking paleontologist, my ass.
Paleontologist, or as I like to call it, really good guesser.
Yeah. Dirt detective.
Anyway,
criticisms of paleontology aside.
Yeah, I mean, that's not what this video is about.
No, we'll do that some other time. We can review paleontology as a profession some other time.
Actually, that could be really interesting.
Oh, God. We get a lot of hate.
Well, dinosaurs aren't real anyway, so whatever.
Not anymore.
They just were made up to sell toys.
Yeah, did you know that? People fucking thinking that the Earth is fucking older than 6,500 years. Bunch of fucking psychopaths. Right. They and the Spawn people should be in the same prison cells.
With a knife.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll solve this problem.
Poor Captain Logan, I'm locking him in jail cells with creationists.
Anyway, What else about this kind of worked for you or didn't work for you, I guess?
Setup's a little weak. We know almost nothing about... I mean, it doesn't really matter that we don't know anything about the old man or the character that we're following. It would have been nice to get a little bit more of a glimpse of their relationship, because we do know that the guy has no malice towards the old man except for how creepy he finds the dude's eye. So that's important, and that definitely helps sort of drive home the fact that this guy's batshit insane.
Yeah, I could see that, but at the same time, I would hate to see more, because I think foreshadowing could ruin this story.
Well, no, I don't think you need foreshadowing. I just would have liked to have sort of gotten a better grasp of who exactly is this motherfucker that's getting hacked up.
Mm.
You know? Like, just a little bit of something. Just sort of... And not even to figure out is he a good or a bad person, just some... It just would have been nice to sort of get more of a complete picture of who exactly is being murdered.
Certainly, and like I'm always curious because like what the hell's the situation? Because does the dude break into his house or does he just live there?
That's exactly it. Well, I think the idea is the idea that I got from it is that the younger guy is there sort of not taking care of the old man, but they're a sort of an assistant.
Yeah,
that's what I sort of got out of it. But again, it would have been nice to sort of know the ins and outs of like who is he in relation to the old man. We know he has to live in the building though because later on when the cops come, he tells them that the old man is out in the country, and they're not like, well, what the fuck are you doing here?
Right.
Why is all this stuff here?
I remember one of the very first videos I ever favorited on YouTube was like a short film made out of this story, and it was like set in the modern day and stuff, but like that scene where the cops show up, the guy's like, oh, I'm house sitting for him.
Okay.
Is how they address that issue. And so I always assumed it was something like that, where he's like some kind of somehow in employment of the guy or whatever.
Yeah.
It's an interesting story, and I don't like it's sparse on details, but that's intentional.
Yeah,
is the thing.
Obviously. I think that if at any point we were to go, oh, it sucks that old man had to die, or oh, it's good that old man got hacked up, I think that would be to defeat the purpose of the story, because it's not about whether or not it's a good or bad thing that the old man died. It's about this guy going fucking crazy because and being driven to that place for such a simple reason. So, yeah, I do think that the lack of detail definitely helps it in that sense, but it would be nice to get sort of a better picture of the situation, especially given how much time we spend with, again, just a dude sitting on the floor at a doorway staring at an old man, you know?
And like spend an hour to get his head in the door and stuff,
yeah.
And I'm just like, what?
Yeah, that all sort of, again, we're going on about how well written it is. That was a little vague. I was sort of a little bit lost at a few points. It's just like, what the fuck is this guy doing?
Well, like, from what I always thought is he just, like, kind of slowly opened the door inch by inch for, like, a good long time.
Right.
So that the old man wouldn't notice.
Yeah, that I got.
And then he slowly, and he didn't open it all the way, just enough to get his head in, and then he slowly puts his head through the door so that the old man won't hear anything or notice in his sleep. And then he slowly gets the lantern in, so it's like a 3-hour process.
Right. Okay.
Like, that's what I always assumed, but at the same time, it's like, that's a really weird way to do things.
Yeah, it's like, why wouldn't you just stand up like a fucking normal person? Also, you know, if you're gonna sneak into a room, would you get on all fours? I would think that would make more noise, because you're putting more of your body weight onto the ground that way.
Yeah.
So if the wood is creaky, you're gonna make more noise because you're putting more of your direct body weight down onto the floor. If you're standing up, you can just you're putting more you're putting more pressure on less surface area, so to speak, but you can still sort of control the sound your body makes more. So,
yeah, it's one of those things where I think you're looking for logic here, and the point is that the guy's fucking crazy.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say too, yeah. But even still, it would have been nice to get more of a sort of a tapestry of what the situation was, a little bit more of who these two guys were, just so we had a better picture of what exactly happened in the story.
I mean, that's fair, but at the same time, I don't want too much detail, because I think one of the great things about this story is how short it is. It is quick, it is straight to the point, and it is creepy as shit.
It is, I said this on Facebook yesterday when I talked about finishing The Martian. All my favorite things are things that I appreciate on a sheer level of creative design. And I'm not going to go as far to say that this is one of my favorite things, because, again, it didn't wow me. But I definitely have to say that it does impress me on a sheer level of creative design, just for what you said, of how how short it is, if that's the point it is, how eloquently written it is, and just how simple an idea it is, and yet how effective the impact is. So it impressed me on all those levels.
I think for me, like, I don't remember being absolutely wowed by it the first time I read it, other than the use of first person.
Mm-hmm.
It's for me, it's going back to this story every few years and rereading it and listening to different versions of it. And this has been done to death. There's a version of Vincent Price doing this story, and he doesn't just, like, read it. He straight up performs it. Like, he's there in costume, and he's like, on a stage, like, speaking about it and everything.
Oh, it's a one-man show. I love those.
Yeah, and then he, like, the ending's the best part, because he starts to go through that, the thumping, the rhythmic beating, it was his heart, and he actually, like, throws a chair and, like, starts ripping up the floorboards and pulls out, like, this, you know, fake heart that's, like, actually moving in his hand.
Yeah, there's a great version of A Christmas Carol that Patrick Stewart did that's just like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it's a one-man show, that's the way to put it, and he's got the story memorized.
Mm.
And it's Vincent Price doing Edgar Allan Poe. Can you imagine something more perfect?
No, dude, it seems like Vincent Price made his career on doing versions of Edgar Allan Poe stories.
Right? Oh man, that's a guy who died too early.
That Fly sequels, he did that too. Anyway.
What?
It's weird. Hey, I'm gonna go on a brief rant since it's fitting for the month. Why is Vincent Price famous, like, more famous for The Fly than the guy who actually was The Fly? Like, if you hadn't seen the original Fly, you probably would think that Vincent Price was The Fly, but he wasn't. There was another guy who nobody fucking talks about, and he was just.
So wait, who was Vincent Price?
He was the guy's brother.
That's weird.
He gets, to be fair though. And he's also, I would say the guy's wife is more of the star than Vincent Price is. All Vincent Price does, and the only reason that he gets as much credit for that movie as he does, is because he's the one who finds the guy, the fly with the guy's head on it at the end, in the spider web, and that's like the most famous scene in that movie.
Help me, help me!
Yeah, he's the guy who finds it, so that's why he's sort of decreed that way. But yeah, you would think that he was the fucking fly, but all he does is just go around going...
No, like, I always assumed so. I never watched that movie just because I'd seen the 1980 remake first, and, you know...
It's actually really good.
It can't possibly be as good as the remake.
No, it's not, but it's different, though, because the guy doesn't go crazy.
I know, I understand that, but it can't possibly be as good as the remake, and that's the problem.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. It's so different, and also it's way shorter. I would say it's worth watching just for those reasons. But it's not better.
No, it's just like the remake is so fucking good, I just can't imagine anything possibly being as good as it, and I don't want to insult anybody, but you cannot tell me from premise alone, from seeing, you know, set pictures alone, that The Fly doesn't sound like a stupid fucking movie.
Yeah.
From seeing the guy walk around with a giant fly's head, that looks like the dumbest thing ever, and so I've never wanted to go back and watch that.
Really, that effect is really good, though. Like, they did it really well. But it's interesting, though, too, because he doesn't go crazy, and also, he can't talk. Like, it's not like... The difference between the two versions is that in the original... It's not like he and the Fly get merged. He and the Fly just
I know, they switch
parts.
heads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he also, since he can't speak, there's also sort of this conflict of he needs to explain to his wife how to do certain scientific things in order to solve the problem. So part of the movie is also sort of like a communication thing.
I don't know, it's just a really weird premise, because if he lost his head, shouldn't he have a fly's brain?
Yeah, that's one of the big problems. It's far from a perfect movie, and I do think the remake is quite a bit better, but it's still worth watching. It's a good science fiction movie. Okay, it's not a horror movie, though. It's sci-fi, straight up sci-fi.
Fair enough. Anyway, so that's our review of The Fly.
Yeah, it's our review of The Fly,
seen.
and also of Telltale Heart. Let's mix them together to be Telltale Fly. It
was the buzzing of his infernal...
Yeah. It's a side story to The Fly. It's about the next door neighbor who's an old man and his live-in aide, and the buzzing of the fly and the guy going, help me, drove him crazy. So he killed the old man.
Okay, sure, why
We
not?
just wrote it. We're gonna get a deal with Hollywood. It's gonna be music.
We're totally gonna sell out.
Absolutely. Coke for everybody.
Coke on tits, here I come.
Yes, finally.
The long-awaited Coke on tits reference.
My dream.
Okay, so I don't think there's much else to say about this. I think we're about done. Let's go ahead and rate it. I'm gonna go ahead and give this 4 out of 5 lanterns that are conspicuously loud.
Loud lanterns, okay.
So 4 out of 5 Guy Gardners.
Okay. Nice. Nice. I got that. I understood that reference. Alright, I'm gonna give it... I don't want to be too mean, because it is good. Alright, I'm gonna give it 3.5 out of 5 stopwatches in cotton.
Yep. Okay. Alright, that'll about do it for that. So, Bill and I, realized that I'm bad at math and scheduling and stuff, so we have...
You should have been there.
Yeah, we have one more of these to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so, since I contractually am not obligated to pick old horror stories, like Gothic literature...
That's why we established that at the beginning. That's a callback for those of you, you know.
Yeah. So we're going to be discussing a horror comic, and what better horror comic to discuss than the very first issue of Tales from the Crypt?
Indeed.
So, everyone, I'll leave you with this. Hello, kitties! Anyway.
That wasn't a bad Crypt Keeper.
Yeah, I do a pretty good Crypt Keeper.
Not bad. You could play the Crypt Keeper, actually.
Yeah, give me the right makeup and everything, you can probably pull it off.
You probably
Anyway,
could.
I'd do it.
Anyway,
everyone, thanks for... Hello, kitties. It's your old pal Sick Part 2 here. I'm joined by my ghoulish friend Sazuba.
Hi, this is getting weird.
Yeah.
I felt disturbed. I was like, I don't want to be here. Why am I hanging out with this fucking corpse? Like, well, is this really what my life has come to?
Well, it's like Godzilla in Hell, the spinoff.
Yeah, exactly. It's Godzilla fan in Hell. Where all we get to watch are Zilla 98 and the Hanna-Barbera cartoon. That's it. Not even Godzilla the series. It's fucking. It's a bad world.
Okay. Anyway, everyone, thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I'm the Fanatic.
And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.
Ah!